In this video, let us learn how we can create a website banner using GIMP. So the first thing that you need to do, you need to actually create a new file in GIMP. So go to Files option on top and then click on the New option. And then you need to specify the size of the image that you want to create. So what you can do, you can actually use a template, or you can actually specify the size that you want to create for that image for the website banner. So what I will do, I'll probably select the template as 600 by 1200, and you can always start with a big template, and then you can later on crop it depending upon the size that you need. So let me select this option 1600 by 1200, and then you can actually click on the OK button if you're happy with the image size that the template has provided you. So let me click on the OK button. So now you will get a very big image to work on, and as you can see here that the image is not really a rectangle that will be appropriate for the website. It looks more like a square. So what you can do, you can actually crop it to make it look like more like a banner. So on the left hand side you can see that there is this floating window, which is your toolbox in GIMP. So you can actually select one option here, which is like a small knife, and when you click on this particular option, this is basically a crop tool, and all you need to do, you need to then go back to your image and just hold your mouse and specify the size of the image that you want. So let us say you're happy with this specific size. So you can actually see at the very bottom that when you are selecting the size using the crop tool, it will tell you that the size is 1600 by 552 pixels. So if you think you're happy with this specific size, so just leave your mouse and you will see that the selected region is now highlighted. So all you need to do, you need to now press the enter, and you will now have a new image size which is now cropped out of your big image. So the next thing that you can do right now is that you can actually import the images that you want to display in the website banner. So before I import the image in GIMP, I want to talk about this interesting concept in GIMP, which is called as the layer. So on the right hand side you can see that we have this another floating window, and the first tab that you see here, if you click on it, you will get the option to work on the layers. So the way GIMP works is that you have different layers, and you can actually work on individual layers, and the final image that you see will be a combination of all the layers that you have in the image that you're working on in GIMP. So right now I already have one image, one layer called as background. So this is probably the last image that you will have in the website image banner that we are working on. So before you import anything in this particular GIMP, before you import the actual image, you can actually create a new layer to work on, which is always good to have because you will always be working on a new layer, and depending upon whether you're happy with your editing, you can actually remove, or you can actually specify that you don't want this layer to be presented in the final output image. So create a new layer. When you right click on your layer section here, you will get the option to specify that you're creating a new layer. And when you create a new layer, the default size will be same as the image size, so you can leave it as it is. And if you want to just work on a blank layer, you can actually leave this layer fill type as transparency. So click on the OK button, And you can see here that now we have two layers. One was the background one, which was there already, and the one that we just added. And by the way, you can actually change the order of these layers if you want. If you want to bring a specific layer on top, then you can actually drag them from one place to another. So this is always a possibility with GIMP. So you can actually add one more layer. Let me see if I can add one more. So right now I have two layers with me. So once you have this new layer added, what you can do, you can actually select this layer, and you can then use any of the image that you want to display in that particular website banner that you're creating from your file folder, or maybe I have this file saved in my desktop, so I'll just drag the file directly and I'll drop it in the image under GIMP. So once you import the image, you will see that the image is now also added as a layer in your GIMP program. So what you can do right now is you can actually specify the image layer that you have just imported, and you can actually scale it, because the image that we have right now is quite big. So let me just resize it. So I'll select the option scale layer, and the width of this particular image is 2048 pixels. So this is quite big in my opinion. So I'll just enter something like 1700. So it is more close to the image size that we have. So if you select, specify the different width, it will be resized for you. And I can see now that the image looks pretty good as compared to the earlier imported one, but it is still not really fitting very well in my image size, the background image size that I specified when I defined the new image to work on. So what you can do right now is that on the left hand side under the Toolbox section, you have this small option called Move Tool. So when you select this Move Tool option and you go back to the image, you can actually drag the image to the right place where you want it to be. And when you drag the image, just make sure that the right layer is selected on the under the layer section. So if you want, you can actually just drag it like this, and you can see here that the image is now fitting well under your GIMP file size that we specified. So once you're happy with this particular part, I think now you can proceed further. So the next thing that you can do right now is that you can actually add a text on top of your image banner. Under the layer section here, we already have a couple of layers. So I have this layer which I am not really using right now, so I can actually delete it. So if you right click on it, just select the option delete layer, and let me add one more layer here, and you can use it to add a text on top of the image. So you can actually change the layer name, because sometimes it is good to have a specific name called as text, which is quite obvious, and then press the OK button. So you can see here that you have a new layer called text, and when you are in the image, make sure that the text layer is selected, and under the Toolbox option, we have this text tool here that will be used for adding a text on top of the image. So make sure that you select this text toolbox option, and once this is selected, you will be able to see a cursor here under the GIMP, and when you click on anywhere on the image, you will be able to actually write the text on top of the image. So you can actually type something like click here, and you can see here that the text is very small. So what we can do right now is we can actually change the font of the text that we have just added. So before you change the font, just make sure that everything is selected under the text. So you can actually press the Ctrl A button just to make sure that the text that we just entered is selected, and enter something like 40, which is quite big. So this is not that big, so I'll probably enter something like maybe 80. So yes, now we have a new text added on top of the image. And maybe this font size is fine, but the font face is not good. So you can actually specify a different font, maybe something like maybe Arial. So you can select a font like Arial, Arial Bold, or you have all the fonts here that you have in your system. So all the fonts will be displayed, and you can actually specify the font that you want. So once you have this specific, text added on top of the image, so maybe, this image looks fine. And if you're happy with this, you can just, save it or export it as a JPG or a PNG. But maybe this positioning of the text is not really great. So what you can actually do, you can actually move this specific text from one place to another. So before you move it, just make sure that the text layer is selected when you're working on the text on top of the image. So select your text layer, and again, when you're moving something, you need to use the move tool. And now what you can do, you can actually click on the text here, and then you can actually move it to the place where you want. So maybe you want to move your click here text on the right hand side, or maybe on the left hand side. So this is probably fine, and I'll just leave it here, and it looks good. The last thing that maybe I want to do is enclose this text with a rectangle so that it looks like a button. It won't be an actual button when you use the image on the website, but it will be like a rectangle surrounding the text. So what you can do now is you can actually add one more layer. And when you add the layer, make sure that you are using a transparency layer fill type, and you can rename the layer text as maybe button. And once you add this new layer, you can actually so let us add a new rectangle which will be enclosing this text. So I can actually add a new layer, and I can maybe name it as a button, and make sure that the layer fill type is transparency. So once you add a new layer, you can see that a new layer has been added now on top of the image. And now we need to create a new rectangle that will be enclosing this text. So on the left hand side under Toolbox, we have this option to specify or to create a rectangle. It says rectangle select tool. So make sure that you select this, and when you go back to the image, you can actually create a rectangle like this. And I think this looks good. So I'll just leave it like this. And the moment you create a rectangle, you will see that these dotted lines are now moving, and it means that this region is now selected, and anything that you do right now on this layer will be only applicable to this rectangular region. So the last thing that I would probably do is fill this rectangular region with maybe a different color. So when you go back to the toolbox, you have the option to actually fill this region with a color. So you need to select this bucket fill tool, and before you use the bucket fill tool, you need to make sure that the color that you want to fill is the right color. So you can actually go to this option here, and you can actually specify a color which is more relevant to the image that you're working on. So maybe I want to use something like a bluish color, or maybe dark red maybe. So I'll use a red color and select the OK button. So once you have this red color selected, go back to the image and click on the rectangular region. So now you can see that we have now created a new rectangular region, but the only problem is that this button is now on top of the text that we added earlier. So what you can do right now is you can actually move this button below the text that we entered earlier. So on the layers menu, under the layer section, you can actually select the layer that you want to move below the text, and then you can go to the layers option on top under the menu and go to the stack option, and then you have this option to lower layer. So when you click on this particular option, you will see that now the text is below the button or rather the layer that we added earlier. So I think this image looks good. And before you export this layer or you save this image as a JPG or maybe as a PNG, the last thing that you want to do is you can actually quickly go through all the layers that you have. And right now I can see that I have one more layer called text, which I think I'm not really using, so I can delete this. And you can actually now save this whole image as a JPG or maybe as a PNG. And before you save this image under GIMP as an image that you can use in the website, it is a good idea to save the raw file as well, so that later on you can you can modify it if you want. So what you can do right now is you can go to File and then you can click on the Save option. So this will give you the option to save this image as a raw file, which is using the extension called XCF. So you can name it as website banner. And when you save this file, you will get this specific banner saved as a raw file under GIMP. And you can see here that right now under my desktop, I have this new banner saved. So before you can use this particular raw file in a website, you need to export it under some usable format. So if you go to File option and go to the option called Export, you can actually save this file as a PNG, which is quite good because it will have some transparencies, or you can save it as a JPG. So just rename the file as you want to save it. So let us say I just want to save it as a JPG file. I can then enter the extension JPG and then click on the export button here to export the image. So when you export the image, it will ask you to specify the quality of the image that you want to export. So you can actually change the quality to 50%, but I don't want to reduce the quality. I want to keep it as 90 so that the quality is not really degraded. And then you need to click on the export button. So when you click on the export button, you will have a new file saved on your desktop. And if you double click on it, you can actually see that now we have a new banner that we can use on a website, and we have this nice button. Of course, it is not really looking very great, but the objective of this video was to get yourself familiar with the basics of the GIMP. I hope this video was useful. Thank you very much.